Go inside the Crimson Tide with your hosts Rodney Orr and Gary Harris, keeping you informed on everything Alabama. Tider Insider TV, brought to you by Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports.
Tuesdays roll around fast, and they're rolling even faster when you did the last TITV on Wednesday.
That's right.
Because of the 4th of July last week. So it's only been 6 days since we were with you. Good evening, everybody, and welcome into the latest edition of Tider Insider TV, brought to you by Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports. I'm Gary Harris alongside Rodney Orr from TiderInsider.com, and we're going to open up with Alabama football recruiting because it exploded on Sunday, one of the busiest days so far of the recruiting cycle. That's the way recruiting can go. It can be slow, and then all of a sudden, the Sunday after the 4th of July, we had fireworks, Rodney. Let's start with this busy Sunday with one of the, there isn't a lot that happens anymore in recruiting that catches you off guard, but this to some degree caught people off guard. 3-star linebacker Justin Okoronkwo of Nuremberg, Bavaria in Germany committed to Alabama. He was originally committed to Maryland, 6'3", 222 pounds. We've talked to some people. I've talked to some people that are connected with Maryland. You've talked to some, people in Germany. This guy's an incredible athlete. He came to Alabama's camp. Even though Nick Saban wasn't here, they made a video. They sent it to Coach Saban. Coach Saban said, let's get this guy. 4'5", 540, 6'3", 222. He looks the part. Now, granted, he does not play against the caliber of competition in Germany that he would at high school football in Alabama or anywhere stateside. But, Roddy, you really like this guy's athleticism.
Yeah, I mean, when you're 6'3" and you're 225 pounds, you clock a 4.5. He's clocked 4.48 at South Carolina. But, Gary, his shuttle time was a 4.06. I mean, that's really good for an NFL corner. You're talking about a high school linebacker. It's pretty amazing. Again, you talked about the competition over there. Obviously, it wasn't the best. But he has been well coached. He's got a high school coach or a club team, I think, is really how they refer to it. His club team coach played in the CFL, was a college football player here in America. So he's got a lot of really good coaching. I think he's a guy, when you look at him athletically, he's got 5-star athletic gifts.
Okoronkwo, we'll just call him Justin O. How about that? But, you made that reference to his athletic gifts. You were told that if he played in America, he would be a 5-star because of his talent.
Well, again, the mentor that brings the players over, the players from Europe every year, they stop. One of the stops, obviously, is here in Tuscaloosa every year for the Nick Saban camp. And he said, look, Nick Saban told us himself 3 or 4 times, this kid's a 5-star player if he plays in America. So, again, I think you look at him, you would say he has to be a little bit raw. There's going to be a big adjustment for him in terms of the competition, Gary. But athletically, I mean, he's got some really impressive numbers.
So Justin O, commit number 11, I should say, in the class of 2024. Later on that afternoon on Sunday, as expected on this one, 4-star defensive back Xavier Brown from famed Mater Dei High School in Santa Ana, California, committed to Alabama over USC and Ohio State. Now, he's originally from Texas, moved to California. He's got the prototypical size for a corner, 6'1", about 185. Has played against high-level competition. There you see him just absolutely abusing that quarterback and wide receiver. He read the route and got the interception. This is a guy, Rod, that probably could have gone anywhere in the country, but has really liked Alabama for a long time.
Yeah. I mean, Gary, how things have changed. You got a guy on the West Coast. He narrows his choices to Alabama, USC, and Ohio State. To be able to go into California, Santa Ana, one of the premier programs, Mater Dei High School, and land a player. Of course, same high school as Bryce Young. And Alabama's recruiting some other top players in that program right now. But to be able to pull him out of California is pretty amazing. A guy that came here as a freshman, earned a scholarship at Alabama's camp. Those relationships that you develop early, you see how important that they are.
All right, 12 commits now in the class of 2024. The 2025 class is already starting to come into shape. So why not get started on 2026, right? And one of the top linemen in that class, I know it's still a couple years away, but this is the way it works. 2026 offensive lineman Zakai Helton from Powerhouse Carrollton High School, just across the Alabama state line there in West Georgia, committed to Alabama on Sunday. 6'3", 315 pounds, a great player in his own right. But keep in mind, he's a teammate of 2026 quarterback Juju Lewis, who may be the top quarterback in the country in that class, and of current tight end Caleb Odom, who's going to announce this coming weekend. But let's start with Helton, because this is a big pickup in its own right. And again, I know it's 2026, but this is recruiting these days.
I had an observer called me about a month ago from the Alabama camp and said, hey, look, there's a guy, you need to go ahead and write his name down. And he said Zakai Helton is a guy that he's only going to be a sophomore this year. He's dominating the camp. He's got 6'3", 300 pounds. When you look at his athleticism, Gary, I mean, it's pretty amazing. And to be able to commit this early, again, it's a long way off. We'll see how it goes. You mentioned Juju Lewis. You mentioned Caleb Odom. Those guys are really highly touted teammates that Alabama's in on as well.
And speaking of Odom, he is set to announce this weekend the tight end out of Carrollton, Georgia. And right now, Rodney, again, he'll make the decision. I think it's on Saturday. It's on Sunday, actually, I'm being told. On Sunday. But the bottom line is this. Alabama seems to be the favorite.
They do. And again, you look at him early, Gary, it appeared he was leaning to Ole Miss. He's one of the top 5 tight ends in the country. Comes over, makes a visit to Alabama. It turned around on his visit. I think since that visit last month, he's been leaning to Alabama heavily. You mentioned all the schools there. Certainly has a lot of schools to choose from. One of the top tight ends in America. It's 6'5", 210. He kind of reminds me a little bit, if you describe him as tight end, more like an Amari Nyblack, a guy that was used in high school to split out, didn't play in line. And that's what I think he'll be. He's a guy that's going to get bigger, and he's got a lot of tools as a receiver.
That's coming up this weekend. Tomorrow night, 4-star offensive lineman Casey Poe out of Lindale High School in Texas is set to announce. You see how strong he is. And that's the thing about him. He's only 280 pounds. And I say only 280 pounds. Can you imagine when he gets bigger and even stronger? 6'5", though, one of the top interior linemen in the class of 2024. And it looks like that Alabama's in the lead for him as well.
It does. And, a lot of schools there, Alabama, Auburn, Clemson, Georgia, LSU, Oklahoma. I mean, many others. Texas Tech's in there really strong out in the state of Texas. A&M's been in it. Texas has tried to recruit him. So you kind of get the drift. I mean, he's wanted. And I think when you talk about his size, Gary, he's got the frame to fill out. He's going to get bigger. He's a really technical guy. I mean, he's strong, as you saw there, but he's really technical. So I think this is a guy that Eric Wolford can take and really develop.
So a lot to look forward to on recruiting in regards to Poe and Odom. Alabama in line, it looks like, to pick up a couple more commits this week for 2024. All right, moving on. The Northwestern hazing scandal fallout continues, and according to Bruce Feldman of The Athletic, Alabama offensive coordinator Tommy Rees is a potential candidate to become a head coach at Northwestern. The 31-year-old Rees is going in his first season with the Crimson Tide and is one of the youngest coordinators in college football. But Feldman says Rees' experience playing and coaching at Notre Dame makes him an attractive candidate. Notre Dame and Northwestern are both academic-focused institutions. Also, Rees spent 2015 as a graduate assistant there. Really got his coaching career started there as a college coach, and his dad had worked there as well. His dad, a respected coach and administrator at the college and NFL level. So there's history there with Northwestern. Now, Alabama fans, don't panic. If he is in the mix, it's probably going to be for the 2024 season. It looks like Northwestern will get through 2023 with an interim head coach. And let's just be honest, Rod. If Alabama's offense has a big year and he develops a quarterback, he's going to be probably a candidate for several head coaching jobs.
Well, we've seen it. I mean, that's kind of the history of it. You look at it, and again, I'm like you, Gary. They're not hiring a permanent coach now. They'll hire an interim, most likely. So a lot of things can happen between now and their decision.
Yeah, and first, let's get through this season, and let's see if Tommy Rees can handle being the offensive coordinator at Alabama before we worry about him becoming a head coach. He's got his work cut out for him this year, that is for sure. Well, still to come on Tider Insider Television. Find out which current Alabama women's golf standout stood out big time at the Women's U.S. Open this past weekend at Pebble Beach. And we'll preview the SEC Football Media Days. They're next week up in Music City. Commissioner Greg Sankey will talk about the college football landscape for the foreseeable future. That's coming up. And we'll be getting to your phone calls, emails, and tweets. As always, the phone number 205-348-WVUA. That's 348-9882. You can email us at the address on your screen, or you can even tweet at us. Use the hashtag TITV. We'll be right back with the only show that takes you inside the Crimson Tide. The one, the only Tider Insider TV will return right after this. SEC Football Media Days kicks off next week in a new location, the Grand Hyatt Hotel in Nashville. Now, this event was scheduled to be there in Nashville a couple of years ago, but because of coming off the pandemic and all that, it got moved to Birmingham. Atlanta has hosted the event, and obviously Birmingham's the most recognized host of the event, but it's going to be in Nashville this year, Rodney. I think that is going to be a lot of fun. And welcome back to TITV, brought to you by Tuscaloosa Tourism Sports. A lot of people talk about our wardrobe and how you got the the white shirt email I see, and we went with the dark tie. And the reason I mention that is usually we have red ties on or crimson ties, but we did not coordinate. Well, it's kind of worked out that way.
And we'll get some messages on that blue, you know.
Oh, remember the year I wore, I guess it was
just don't wear orange.
Well, yeah, I can't remember what color I wore, man, and they lit me up. A couple people tried to get me fired. So you got to be careful what you wear on the set of Tider Insider TV. Let me tell you that. All right, Crimson Tide is set to take the stage this coming Wednesday in Nashville, next Wednesday, a week from tomorrow. And many of the topics that will be discussed, of course, will include the quarterback situation. There's no doubt about that. And, we're going to talk a lot about that next Tuesday, and we'll have a crew up there next Wednesday for Alabama. Let's go ahead and tell you who's going to be there for Alabama next week for the Media Day representation. Obviously, head coach Nick Saban, but also junior offensive lineman J.C. Latham, junior defensive back Kool-Aid McKinstry, and junior edge rusher Dallas Turner. That trio will be joining, as I said, Nick Saban for their team period, which begins on Wednesday. So I guess it's junior day for Alabama. No seniors, but these days the top juniors are like seniors because they're going into the draft anyway. But what do you think of the choices here to represent Alabama next week?
Yeah, I think those are really good choices. I mean, obviously those guys, if they're going to be the leaders of this team, certainly three of the best leaders on this team. So those are the guys that you want to represent you in this event.
And I think those three football players are not only going to be terrific on the field in terms of their playing skill, but also in terms of leadership this year. And that is huge when you're trying to win another national championship. And now it's time for Coach Talk. SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey was recently on the Joe Klatt Show addressing the questions about the approaching expanded college football playoff that will have to be answered, and not just in regards to the spacing of games and scheduling, but how they can base that schedule around the lives of the student athletes and make it work. More games, longer schedule. It's also got to work for these young student athletes as students as well.
What's contemplated is 2 weeks and then about 10 days. So depending on one's ranking, the break is an open week. And, from my position, there's some health issues when you go through the season, provide that break, and then provide a rotation of games, because there are also demands in December on campus that an NFL team will never experience, a young person on a college campus. I think we have a decent pacing. Where we place those games long term is a bit of a question.
All right, Rod, this is an interesting dilemma because you and I were alive. I don't know that I remember the 10-game schedules, but I was alive when they played 10 games in the regular season. Then they went to 11. Then to 12, added an SEC championship game, and now they've added 2 college football playoff games. Now they're talking about adding more games. We talk a lot about player safety. We talk a lot about what's in the best interest of the student athletes, but we just keep adding more games. I do think this is something that has to be looked at in terms of the length of the schedule, in terms of how many games you can play, in terms of how it's going to interfere with pro days and NFL work in the Senior Bowl and everything else. There's a lot that goes into this expansion other than just, hey, we're going to expand the college football playoff.
Yeah, and we're also pushing the calendar, Gary. I mean, we're now moving into towards the middle of January. Some of these championship games, January the 11th, I think has been the latest one. So I think that's certainly something to look at as well. And again, I think 15 games, when you talk about some of these teams that are playing 15 games, of course the 2 teams that, unless you play in an extra game, that's a lot of games. So I really don't see how, you can go beyond what they are right now. It's going to be interesting to see how that kind of works out, though.
And as we go forward, Rodney, before we move on to another topic, we saw last year, we're seeing it more often. Of course, if you expand the playoff, that's more teams, keep people involved. But if now, once the playoff's expanded, if you're not in the playoff, we really wonder how many of these players are going to stay engaged for their bowl games and finishing the season with their teams.
I don't see it. I mean, it's amazing the way the thing has really kind of developed with the bowl games, Gary. I mean, they used to be. I mean, you talked about when you grew up. When we grew up, I mean, these bowl games were really important.
Huge.
They were something that you watched. I mean, they meant something for the next year.
Absolutely.
And for the end of that season. Just not there anymore.
Not that way anymore. One other quick note on football. Caleb Odom, we said it was on Saturday, and then we said it was on Sunday. It is on Saturday, the 15th, when he'll make his announcement as far as what college he's going to attend. Alabama is the leader. All right, let's move on. Alabama's Benedetta Morosco had an impressive weekend at the Women's United States Open at Pebble Beach. She shot 8 over par for the tournament, which gave her the honor of being the low amateur. This is huge for Morosco for Alabama. She was really good in the first round, shot a 270, which was tied for 9th place after the first round. But low am, now she's got a decision to make. Is she going to return to Alabama? She's just a junior, or is she going to move on to professional golf? We will see. Certainly, Rodney, we'd like to see her come back. But again, she finished ahead of a lot of pros out there in the biggest women's golf event in the world. Well, still to come on TITV, find out which Crimson Tide baseball players have been selected in the Major League Draft. And coming up next, we'll welcome your phone calls, emails, and tweets. Again, the phone number, 205-348-WVOA. That's 348-9882. Go ahead and call us now, Tider Insider Nation. We want to hear from you next.
Yeah, I couldn't hear.
Bama baseball in the MLB Draft. The most recent Crimson Tide players taken today include former Hillcrest High Patriot and Shelton State standout Garrett McMillan, selected by the Pittsburgh Pirates with the 407th pick in the 14th round. Alabama shortstop Jim Jarvis, scooped up by the Tigers in the 11th round. With those two being selected today, they join outfielder Andrew Pickney, 4th round by the Nationals. Pitcher Grayson Hitt, 4th round by the Diamondbacks. Pitcher Hunter Furtado, selected in the 6th round by the Pirates. And outfielder Caden Rose, selected in round 7 by the Boston Red Sox. That's 6 current Alabama players drafted in the amateur player draft, plus 3 signees have been taken as well. So we knew Alabama had talent this past year. That's being proven out in the draft. The problem now is for new head coach Rob Vaughn is, if I get my math right, counting up, I think Matt Gassetti is the only returning starter out of the position players due to be back on this team. So it looks like it could be a rebuilding situation in the first year for the new coach.
I mean, he's got a real chore. We talked about that last week.
Yeah. And bringing in a couple transfers from the portal, some good signees, some guys that are returning that have potential. But after this great season, we'll see what happens with the new coaching staff and a brand new team next year. All right, let's get to the phone lines. We're going to start off with good pal Dale down in Moundville. Hey, Dale, how are you?
Great, guys. How y'all doing?
Doing well.
First of all, I don't want y'all to think I'm being negative, but I'm looking as forward to the season as anybody else. But when I look at our defensive line, I wonder if they're mid-level defensive line in the SEC. Last year we got pushed around a little bit. I'm really hoping that Kevin Steele make a difference. And I know Jaheim Otis should be a lot better, but I just wonder what y'all's thoughts are on that.
Well, Dale, I don't think you're being negative at all. And I think a lot of people have questions about the defensive line. And I'll be honest with you, I think there's some people that have been disappointed by the level of play. Now, when you ask me about the defensive line, and Rodney will go into much more detail, I don't think talent's the issue. I think they've got talented players. I think they've got the numbers. They've got to develop these guys. I think they need to play more guys, and they need to get more production from the defensive line, though. I'll agree with that.
Well, and I'll say this too. I do think Jamil Burrows, that's a big loss. I mean, I think Jamil had an opportunity to really make a strong impact. But you look at it, you got Tim Smith, you got Justin Aboybe, you've got Jaheim Otis. Some people think he might be the best defensive lineman in the SEC. This is a group, Dale, that one media outlet is already kind of tabbed as the #1 defensive line group in this conference. Now, I don't know about that. There's some other good defensive lines in the SEC, but they've got some young guys, Gary, that you talked about that can be really developed in. Is this the year that Jamarian Latham finally makes that impact?
I hope so. Local product from Reform Pickens County High School. All right, let's get to our email question of the day, brought to you by KDM Service Corporation. KDM Service Corporation, serving your family like our family for all your heating and air conditioning needs. It's KDM Service Corporation. All right, DeMoy Kennedy said Colorado's strength program is better than Alabama's. Your thoughts? That's Tyler in Tuscaloosa. Tyler, I don't think that's exactly what he said. First of all, I think DeMoy Kennedy is going to have a big year for Colorado. He came out of Theodore High School compared to C.J. Mosley. I thought that was fair. Hated it didn't work out for him at Alabama. What he actually said is that Colorado was more technically sound, but he said that both strength programs are big time. But listen, man, it didn't work out for him here. I don't take that as a major shot, but oftentimes when a player leaves because it didn't work out for him at one school, he's looking for reasons to give you why he went to this school. So he says they're more technically sound, fine. I tell you this, if Alabama were to play Colorado this year, I'd take Alabama on the field.
We'd find out who's technically sound. Trust me.
Yeah.
Now, look, I don't know what he really means by technically sound. I mean, if he's talking about technique, look, David Ballou, as you see him right there, he's one of the best. So Again, I'm not really sure what he means by technically sound.
Yeah, I hope it works out for him. I really do think he's a talented linebacker, and I thought he was going to have a big career here at Alabama. Injuries, though, hurt him. All right, we're going to take a break. We'll come back with more phone calls. 205-348-WVUA is the number, 348-9882. Give us a call. We'll be right back on TITV. Winding down this edition of TITV, but we're going to get to another phone call. Our good friend Bill Taylor is with us. BT, how are you?
Yes, hello, Rodney. How are y'all?
Hey, BT.
Well, BT.
Good. I was going to ask Gary and Rodney that, the 8-game schedules for this year. Are they going to reevaluate that for next year, or how are they going to do that?
Yeah, BT. There'll be a lot of talk about the schedule at SEC Media Days coming up next week. You're right. It's going to be 8 games, I'm pretty sure, for the next 2 years. After that, then, we'll see. But I think that they will reevaluate it. Right now, I'll be honest with you, I'm kind of in the Nick Saban camp with the way it's set up. With Texas and Oklahoma coming in, I like the 8-game model right now better than I did the 9-game model based on how it was going to play out for Alabama.
I think you're right. But you look at that schedule, it's still really tough.
Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing.
All right. Thanks for the phone calls and the emails tonight. We are going to take our final time out on the program, and we'll be back to wrap it up on a beautiful evening. We had a lot of rain lately, but look at it tonight. It's blue skies and just a few light clouds here in Tuscaloosa on the University of Alabama campus. We'll be back after this. You know how some people are just good at everything they do? Mark Ingram is one of those guys. He was good right off the bat when he got to Alabama as a freshman in 2008. 12 years in the NFL. The Saints didn't re-sign him. He's moving on to TV. He'll be part of Fox's Big Noon Kickoff college football pregame show beginning this fall. Just real quick, Rodney, I think he'll do great.
Oh, he'll do fantastic. I thought he did well on the Alabama radio network.
Yeah, he sure did. He's a natural. All right, that's going to do it for TITV. A replay tonight at 10:30. You can catch it anytime at WVUA23.com. For Rodney Orr, I'm Gary Harris. Thanks for watching. Have a great night, everybody, and we'll see you again next week on TITV.